A very good evening. You're watching Times Now Live with me, Kritsween Walia. Well, Bharat gave a clear message on Khalistani terror to the world from the G20 platform, which remained a huge success with a historic consensus in the New Delhi Declaration. While the whole world is all praises for Bharat's vision in bringing together the various world powers and in bringing the African Union to the global table, India made sure to not miss out on any opportunity in raising its apprehensions with countries concerned during some of the bilateral engagements. Mincing no words, India made its stand clear: no mercy for Khalistan propagandists. And while there is no end to Khalistan terror across the world, world leaders had a different stance on the pressing issue. The issue of Khalistan threat was discussed in meetings with the United Kingdom and Canada by Prime Minister Modi, while UK condemned Khalistan propaganda and vowed action against the same. Canada Prime Minister Justin Trudeau apparently sought shelter under a free speech narrative and claimed that peaceful protests were not barred in his country and that the actions of a few people cannot be mistaken for a representation of the entire community or the country. Listen in.
Over the years with Prime Minister Modi, we've had many conversations on both of those issues. Obviously, Canada will always defend freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of peaceful protest. That's something that's extremely important to us. At the same time as we're always there to prevent violence, to push back against hatred. I think on the issue of the community, it's important to remember that the actions of the few do not represent the entire community or Canada. The flip side of it, we also highlighted the importance of respecting the rule of law, and we did talk about foreign interference.
The MEAs highlighted the insights of meeting and stated that the Prime Minister conveyed strong concerns about continuing anti-India activities of extremist elements in Canada. And they also pointed out that such activities promoted secessionism and incite violence against Indian diplomats, damaging diplomatic premises and threatening the Indian community in Canada and their places of worship as well. The Prime Minister reminded that the nexus of such forces with organized crime, drug syndicates and human trafficking should be a concern for the Canadian government as well. The Prime Minister also mentioned that a relationship based on mutual respect and trust is essential for the progress of the India-Canada relationship. Why this is of absolute interest to India, though, is given some of the recent attacks or protests that were carried out across Canada. Just 2 days ago, for example, a temple was desecrated in Vancouver with pro-Khalistan graffitis. A pro-Khalistan referendum, for example, was held in July this year, where over 40,000 people participated and echoed Khalistani sentiments. In June, a tableau showcasing former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's assassination was taken out in Brampton. The list is endless. So let's quickly open this up and talk about the political compulsions, perhaps, of the Prime Minister of Canada. The manner in which India has looked at these two seemingly different positions reflected in the meetings held on the sidelines of G20. And this is something that is being spoken of on social media as well. While the UK Prime Minister was received with warmth and the dialogue seemed to be held on a very personal note with a common resolve to fight K elements, the meeting with Canada on the sidelines of G20 saw a seemingly formal interaction and discussions against Khalistani activities in Canada. Quickly opening this up with Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, who joins us on this very important issue. We also have Puneet Sahani, expert on evolution of Sikh identity and Khalistan terrorism, is also coming up with a book on the issue. We also have Prabhloch Singh, political analyst, and Mr. Pula Rao, political analyst himself, completes the panel. My first question is to Mr. Prabhloch Singh. Mr. Prabhloch Singh.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. What are the political compulsions of the Prime Minister of Canada, while, you know, his counterpart from the United Kingdom, where this is an issue and this issue has been raised on a diplomatic level by India, not once, on multiple occasions? What stops the Canadian Prime Minister?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Mr. Singh?
Yeah, is that question for me? I'm sorry.
You want me to talk first?
Mr. Prabhloch Singh, that's for you.
Okay, all right. So, with Canada, going with Canada. Canada wants to introduce tourism, wherein after a few years, when Khalistan will not exist anywhere, people will visit Canada for Khalistan tourism. That's where it's headed. So, they should take a clue from UK. They should take a clue from the UK Prime Minister, and they should do what is right for India, what is right for Canada, and what is right for the world. Violence and separatism. Separatism with violence has no place anywhere in the world. So, Justin Trudeau should take a clue from that. And I know, probably they have a lot of vote bank there that forces them to, do certain things which are not in alignment with the principles that the world leaders stand for today. But, Canada should rethink and reevaluate their stance on Khalistan.
Okay, I'm glad, Mr. Singh, you're taking that position. You spoke of vote bank, and I was mentioning political compulsions. The current Canadian government is heavily dependent on a party led by a Canadian Sikh, Jagmeet Singh, who's a known Khalistani sympathizer. In 2019 general elections in Canada, Trudeau's Liberal Party bagged 157 seats. So that are some of the stats for you. Needs the support of at least 17 legislators to stay afloat, and the support is being provided by Mr. Jagmeet Singh. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, how far is Justin Trudeau going to be able to go with this kind of a support? Because the reason and the cause is something that one can't ignore, and for how long?
I coined a very iconic phrase, rather infamous phrase called coalition dharma. What Justin Trudeau is doing with the support of Mr. Jagmeet is actually coalition adharma. This gentleman should be ashamed. What Canada has become, it's a laughing stock, and I think it's high time, and I congratulate our dispensation, and especially Prime Minister Modi, for talking tough to Justin Trudeau. I'd like to make 4 points here. Number one, this is the same man who actually tacitly gave support to the farm protests, wherein you had the kind of nascent birth, if I may say so, of the Khalistani movement yet again on Indian soil. If you remember, his is the government that has given billions in subsidies to Canadian farmers, and yet he was batting for the middlemen who were blocking India's highways for a year and perpetrating large-scale violence. Number two, he was absolutely silent about the Khalistani elements that perpetrated mayhem and violence and murder and arson during all those protests. Number three, when he talks rather patronizingly, as he did just now, I saw the clip, where he says Canada always stands up for human rights and freedom of speech. Do you mean to say India doesn't? And number two, when he says we will always push back upon hate, well, I'd like to ask him, I can see on the screen right now, Kritsween, that offending and horrendous tableau that, by the way, of our slain Prime Minister, in the act of murdering her, that was passing through the streets of Canada. What action did Justin Trudeau take? And I'd like to have strong condemnation. Mr. Rahul Gandhi did not condemn that kind of grisly act on Canadian soil. And number four, all those repeated dozens of temples that have been attacked by Khalistani elements, I'm afraid, to top it all, you had the Kanishka bombers walking free. Puneet would know more about that. So all in all, I agree with the previous panelists. When Khalistani movement would finish from everywhere else in the world, it would be epicentered in Canada. That is the future that awaits Justin Trudeau and Canadians.
And India set the right example. We walk the talk. We raise it diplomatically. We raise it when your representatives, when your leaders come to our land, because we want to keep it straight and to the point. Mr. Pulla Rao, what Mr. Anand Ranganathan is referring to is what has been said by Mr. Trudeau. Journalists putting out that straight question to him on what kind of a conversation took place on Khalistani elements in Canada and how India, of course, is concerned by what's been going on. And before I take that across to Mr. Puneet Sahani, Mr. Pulla Rao, what explains this? You're talking about freedom of peaceful protest. You're talking about freedom of expression, freedom of conscience. Are those protests peaceful, sir, wherein temples have been vandalized, wherein our envoys have been threatened? What are we talking about?
Let me tell you what we are talking about. 7 years ago, 8 years ago, Mr. Trudeau came here. The government correctly gave him a cold reception and showed him his place. Only in the last day they showed him some respect when so-called proponents of Khalistan were excluded from various receptions. That message has got through. He came by himself to attend the function which we invited him. There should be simply respect given to a guest, number one. And number two, defending him and his actions is not my role, but he is on a federal setup. And various state governments there have their own way of doing things. And as before me you mentioned, there are ample political compulsions. I think unless there's a totally different party in government there, they cannot completely agree to our stand. He recognizes it, he said what he wants. He has come to our country. We should show him respect, give him a stiff warning.
Give him respect.
And then send him.
Give him respect.
Otherwise,
for lying, sir,
difficult.
for lying to the world, forget India. The kind of respect that ought to be given to him has fairly been given to him. He was welcomed by the Indian delegates just like anyone else was. Of course, one could feel the tension a little bit. Mr. Ranganathan, before I take it across to Mr. Sahni, would you want to say the same or rather acknowledge what I thought was going on? Because, given the widest of smiles that the Prime Minister gave to the other world leaders, the warmest of hugs that were extended by the Prime Minister, we saw a little bit of a formal interaction with Mr. Trudeau. Do you think there's something wrong with that, given the kind of clear position he's taken and Mr. Pulla Rao is accepting it?
I do agree with Mr. Rao. I think he makes a fair point in an international gathering such as this, where, of course, our national prestige is also on show. I think it would have been unwise for the Prime Minister to publicly show his anger, India's anger, towards Mr. Trudeau. So, yes, I think I take that point. Having said that, I think I absolutely did not like in that press conference where Mr. Trudeau was taking the high moral ground, as if, we are asking him to do something that others may not ask him to do, that America may not ask him to do, that other Western democracies may not ask him. We are asking him to rein in violent men who have murdered Indians and who will go to any extent to perpetrate large-scale violence. Now, how is that coming under the category of freedom of speech and expression, I ask you? Yes, I am a free speech absolutist. It's a different matter altogether. These are violent men, and Justin Trudeau is doing absolutely nothing to rein them in. So yes, let him not be patronizing and say, look, India's case is different, we will rein in hatred and terror. I'm sorry, he's not doing absolutely anything in that department at all.
Okay. Mr. Pulla Rao, India is not going to accept this. We're not going to accept the uncalled for vandalism. We're not going to accept the uncalled for desecration of Hindu temples. And how the former Prime Minister and the tableau that was paraded in Canada celebrating the assassination of Indira Gandhi, that's not going to be tolerated by the Indians. But Mr. Puneet Sahni, all of this has been ongoing. Do you think this has become a recent trend all the more, given fears of a government collapse if this is not done to perhaps appease the likes of Jagmeet Singh?
Points. So one,
are you talking to me?
was saying,
Mr. Rao, I'm coming back to you. That's for Mr. Puneet.
No, I'm not. Please don't interrupt. So the thing is, there is no more bank. So the thing is, the worst thing that Trudeau has done is he has gone out of his way and silenced the Sikhs who spoke against Khalistan from coast to coast. So I give you just two examples. So for example, in the West Coast, so there was like Braj Dahan. So he chucked him out and put this Khalistani Harjeet Sajjan. And there were droves of, very, deeply religious Sikhs who are Amritdhari Sikhs who quit the party in disgust that you have brought in a Khalistani. So that is point number one. Then, there was one person, his name is Ramesh Sangha. He represented the Punjabi constituency of Brampton. So when the Canadian intelligence, they gathered, so he is compromising with Canadian national security. They gathered the intelligence that the Khalistan threat is real. And under the pressure of the Khalistani, Trudeau dropped the references to Khalistan and, Sikh extremism. So a Sikh MP actually stood up and said, what the hell, I am a proud Sikh, but, this Khalistan terrorism should have no place. Justin Trudeau demolished his career. He was, demonized as a racist. And now his political career is over. He runs the law practice. So the thing is, Justin Trudeau, for his ideology, he has gone out of his way to destroy all the Sikhs. And I think there is a small failure of also like the Indian journalists. They just go and ask them, what do you have to say about this Khalistan terrorism? They never ask him a question. So I give you an example.
No, but
So
Mr. Puneet, if it were not for the 2024 seats, if it were not for the 2024 seats enjoyed by the NDP in the parliament, would his stand been any different?
So again, so this happens now. I'm talking even, so what happened, Harjeet Sajjan was before that.
Okay.
And you know, Canadian politics is actually a bit more complicated. It's not who you decide. So, you know, they bust people, and, you know, it's a bit complicated how they have undermined the system, this World Sikh Organization and Khalistanis. So that will go into another thing. I just want to make a small point. You know, that's actually very important. So it was me and a couple of other people that, you know, raised all this alarm about this Mrs. Gandhi being paraded through the streets of Brampton. So that started from this Gurdwara. It's called Guru Nanak Sikh Mission, Brampton. I have just posted on my Twitter, you can see the magazine of that very Gurdwara. It is proudly saying we had a person, Surinder Singh Shindar. You know, he escaped to Canada after terrorism in India. Then from Canada, he went to India and he murdered a Shiv Sena leader. And then he escaped to Canada. And then he went back to India again, and then he killed an assistant sub-inspector. And then he escaped back to Canada. And then he went back to India again to again do terrorism, and then he was killed, and he is a great person. Now, I just want to ask, this is the magazines of these very Gurdwaras that, you know, they are themselves proudly saying that we have people who go to India, they murder people, and they come back to Canada. And these are great. This is freedom of speech, or this is promoting terrorism? Okay. This should be the question that should be asked to them. This is not what Khalistan is saying. This is what their own magazines are saying, that, you know, this is a great person.
Okay. Prabhloch Singh wants to come in. Sir, go ahead.
Sure. You know, Canada needs to realize before it's too late that this Khalistani sect that they are supporting, they will not even be loyal to them. They will not be loyal to anybody. So, you know, if they think that, you know, by supporting these, you know, this particular section of people, they're doing a great deed, they are not. They are only going to cause trouble to their own country. You know, India will handle it. India will handle it. India knows how to handle this, but Canada needs to start worrying about how it will handle this problem internally within Canada, because these people will not be loyal to even Canada.
Okay, that's a word of caution coming in from Mr. Prabhloch Singh. Mr. Anand Ranganathan, and this is the statement on part of the MEA. Very, very important to highlight how the MEA says that the Prime Minister highlighted that India-Canada relations are anchored in shared democratic values, respect for rule of law, and strong people-to-people ties, conveyed our strong concerns about continuing anti-India activities of extremist elements in Canada. Will Canada, at the end of the day, have to face consequences for going soft on Khalistani elements in Canada?
I think it is high time. And I think based on the couple of points I'd like to make right now, Kritsween, I think, as I said, it is high time that India took a very strong stand. It's not the same as the situation was 30, 40 years ago, when we would be pleading to the rest of the world to see the kind of terrorism that has been perpetrated from across the border or from countries that are giving financial support, and the world did absolutely nothing. The world woke up after 9/11. The world saw what happened at 26/11. So now the world also remembers, at least in a very limited way, if you may, about the terrorism that has been perpetrated, if not directly from Indian soil, but financial supports and other being given from across Canada or America. Number one, you know the most dangerous thing right now, that Khalistanis are making kill lists of Indian diplomats in various embassies.
Yes.
That has to be stopped immediately. How is that free speech? Making a kill list, I'm sorry, is not free speech. They circulate that. Puneet knows that more. So our Indian diplomats in Canadian embassies or consulates are under direct threat. Number one. Number two, when Canadians talk about not giving financial support, why do they not share, or why are they reticent about sharing all the details about the Khalistani elements that are staying permanently in Canada and their financial dealings in India? Canada refused this about 2 months ago.
Yes.
So these are the 2 points where hard actions can immediately be taken by the Canadian Prime Minister.
And they must be called out for playing hide and seek. They must be called out for not putting out facts on the table for the world to see and make their own judgments. Mr. Pullarao, you know, the threat from SFJ to lock down India's consulate in Vancouver, threat to Indian envoys in Canadian soil, as is being referred to by Mr. Anand Ranganathan, all of this is for everyone to see. So let's not try and, reassure ourselves that the world is a fool and they're completely blind to what's going on in Canada. Those days are gone, sir. We have social media and we've seen all of those worrying pictures.
We can always recall our diplomats if need be. We have that tool with us, and there's no harm. If a situation comes where our diplomats are in danger, recall them, reduce our level of engagement. And also, they should be a very fine line.
That's not the best way out, sir.
We should not give too much importance. No, let me finish. We should not give too much importance. India is a very big country. To elements there, give them publicity. And Trudeau also mentioned there is an element of external interference.
Mr. Pullarao,
they're aware that some other countries are
how you
financing
perceive
these
it.
fellows.
And the United Kingdom Prime Minister perceives it no differently, and that's why he came out to say that we're not going to tolerate these kind of radical elements, and hence gave that word of assurance to the Prime Minister of our country, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. What stops Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is for everyone to see, but I hope that the Indian government is able to take this up diplomatically to an extent that we're not coming across those worrying pictures in days to come. A strongly worded statement from the ME of what the Prime Minister conveyed to his Canadian counterpart. Many thanks, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. We head into a very short break with that.